Hey, it's Citizen Cosmos. We're Serge and Anna, and we discover Cosmos by chatting with awesome people from various teams and communities. Join us if you are curious how dreams and ambitions become code.
Hi everyone, and we have Josh Lee with us today, or I think most people know him as Dogemos. He is the Korean community advocate and a developer relationship for Tendermint, and he does many other things, which we will find out about today. So Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, how are you today?
I'm doing great today. It's in the evening, but hasn't been too long since I woke up. Living the European US time recently. But yeah, it's doing great.
I hope it hasn't been a busy day yet.
No, not yet. It's about to get started.
Cool. So let me ask you the first question. We'll jump straight away. So the first question is that from what I know you, from what I spoke to you over the past few months, and judging from your Twitter, you definitely seem like somebody who Anna, who's taught me a new word today, W-shaped specialist, which means somebody who's very diversified in loads of things that he does. I didn't know that, so thank you, Anna, for that. Especially judging from your Twitter activity and all your Cosmos activity and so on. So just describe yourself, your role at Tendermint, and what you do.
So yeah, that's the first time I heard of, W-shaped specialist. I mean, that's pretty cool. I've thought over it also. I tend to just kind of call myself like a Swiss Army knife. There's that master of one and whatever, but I'm just the type of person who's more I'm a very generalized. I do a lot of things, so in Tendermint I help out with the design. I've also been around Cosmos for a while, so trying to find the community approach, market approach, and on the side I'm working with our developer Tony, building up Kepler, working on interchain accounts. I actually don't come from a developer background, so that's where the people around me help me out a lot. But the community is so amazing that when I have any questions about a lot of the technical stuff, they're always more than happy to help me out, try to figure that out better. So yeah, in Tendermint, design, community, ecosystem development, videos, content, yeah. So and then localizing a lot of that in Korea as well.
Cool. A little bit of everything then. We will get to Kepler, definitely. I have some questions about it. Before we get to it, we want to try and ask you some weird questions if you think they're too weird. You don't have to answer, but please do. No, I'm joking. No weird questions. We just like to get to know the person. But we'll definitely get to Kepler because it's a very interesting part. But first question is first, and I actually don't have it on my list, but why Dogemos? Tell us about that nickname. I want to know the story behind it.
Yeah, the story behind Dogemos. So how that was put together, the first time I actually got into crypto, I think I was in college, and I studied in the US. All my family lived in Indonesia, but I was Korean. So during Christmas break, I didn't have the luxury of going home for Christmas when all my other friends did. So I just kind of stay home and look for stuff online, and I happened to run across the Dogecoin Reddit, and this was back in end of 2014, I think, and it was something very fascinating because it's the first time I've really seen internet money concept being used on a forum. And back then, those guys were trying to do crazy stuff fund a NASCAR driver that couldn't find a sponsor. So let's try to fund them in Dogecoin and try to get big face of a Shiba Inu on the hood of the car, and try to fund the bobsleigh team from Jamaica and things like that. I was like, oh my god, this is hilarious. So this is exactly the kind of things that I'm really into. It's just a lot of random things, and that's how I actually first got Bitcoin, was to buy Dogecoin. So Dogecoin and just Doge in general has a special place in my heart. Kept it there for a while. Haven't really actually done anything with the Dogecoins because as soon as I graduated college, I had to go to the military and things. And so that's why I wasn't in crypto at all back then. And when I got to know Cosmos in the end of 2017, and I was like, Cosmos, yeah. This is it. And I was just like, all right, how do I put the two things together? And I was like trying to come up with like creative names because I didn't really want to like be, doing a lot of the activities with my real name at the time. So I was like, well, I'll put the two things I really like most about crypto together. So it's like got the Doge from Dogecoin and Mos from Cosmos. So yeah, I've just been going with Dogemos now.
I like that. But you said a really good point that Dogecoin at one point, I think they actually sponsored the driver, right? They did eventually.
Yep, they actually did get big Shiba Inu on the hood of the car. Can't remember his name. Yeah, Josh someone, I think, as well.
It wasn't you, right, Josh? I mean, we get to connect the dots now. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
You also started to mention your Cosmos story there, and that was my kind of like next question. But how did you get to work for Tendermint eventually? I mean, one thing is getting to know about Cosmos and realizing how cool that is, because I think that's why we all kind of got here in the first place. But why Tendermint and how Tendermint?
So I think I first learned about Cosmos when I was working as a crypto journalist in Korea, and this was back in the ICO boom, so everyone was just going nuts about crypto. And this was actually right before the hype got started. I landed a job as starting up like one of these crypto medias here, so trying to understand the crypto market and trying to write about it in a language that I haven't spoken for 11 years. That was real rough, but the crypto market itself was just completely insane at the time, and that energy I think kind of kept driving me forward. And my editor there was a participant in the Cosmos fundraiser, and he was doing a lot of the local Korean community activity in Korea. So got to have a lot of conversation about Cosmos, the blockchain market, and things like that. And he's the one that really got me into this whole Cosmos thing. And one thing led to another. Joined his validator, Lunamint, and then I was kind of tasked with building out the community and building out the product too. At the time, it was called Lunagram. Tried to put a Cosmos wallet inside Telegram, but we kind of ran out of resources at the end, so we haven't really been. I don't think it's as well maintained now since I've left, but yeah. And then got in touch with the Tendermint team because we've met through the times that they joined some conferences in Korea, came to some of the Cosmos meetups and stuff, and got to join the Tendermint team from there on.
You mentioned Lunamint team, and I think we have to record an episode with these guys, because everyone I speak to talks about Lunamint. We have to record them, I think, because it seems like they've been there since the very beginning, and I know them like not online, offline. Okay, so a tricky question, Josh. You recently had like a really viral and a cool tweet thanks to Today in Cosmos, and thanks to the fact that the content was really cool, describing Tendermint and Cosmos in an LE5 manner. Could you describe in one sentence what are the differences between Tendermint and Cosmos and the benefits of each?
I have to think about this.
We can come back to that.
I'll put that question back in to my head and try to come up with a good answer for it. That tweet that you mentioned, it was like just me thinking over how do I explain all these different stacks in a very simple manner to other people, because I get that question a lot, and that actually came through with 2 or 3 days of thinking with different analogies. So I don't expect to have this good answer right away, but I'll kind of come back to that.
Yeah, okay, then I have another question. What is the beauty of technology behind Tendermint?
The beauty of Tendermint is its simplicity in some ways, because people are trying to come up with better consensus algorithms that supposedly do this and that better, but I think what contributed to the success of Tendermint was that it was a relatively, and I say relatively with a lot of weight, a relatively simple consensus algorithm that was able to be built out very early on, which allowed other people to use it very early on, and which was able to be iterated and improved upon before anyone else really had a good way of starting this out. I have so much respect for Ethan and Jay for coming up with this because, when I first learned about Tendermint, and I still don't 100% understand Tendermint, to be honest. From the way that a lot of the technical minds around me described it, it's like, this is a mathematical problem and you'd be lucky to, come up with a good solution to one mathematical problem in your life. For these two amazing co-founders to kind of have this done so early in their life and actually build it into a product, that's absolutely fascinating. And it's amazing that I kind of get to be part of this story very early on and being used in other applications as well.
I'm really happy that you first mentioned the simplicity, because it's my core point. I always tell people that, okay, let's do very, very simple thing and then we can interact and do it more and more complicated. But simplicity is one of the most difficult things in our life and in technology sphere, to be honest.
Exactly. And that's how most good products are built in the long run, right? You start with something simple, you just do it really well, and then you iterate upon it and you build a better product as you go. If you have a big goal with, really lots of moving parts and complicated ideas, chances are you're not even going to be able to finish it. And that's why I always like to keep it really simple and start out simple. The end product might not be simple, but, it's a process, not the goal, right?
Yeah, and if we're talking about the beginning of the project, for those listeners who are just starting to get acquaintance with Tendermint, what would you recommend start with? Like maybe top 3 articles, posts, whatever.
I think the key part in understanding why Tendermint matters should come from understanding the trade-offs between safety and liveness, because I think that's the one component that sets Tendermint apart from all of the other consensus algorithms that existed previously. I don't know, I think just kind of getting to understand proof of work, that helped me out initially a lot better. And then later getting into kind of understanding liveness properties and safety properties and why each of these matters. Because, in the proof of work world, having forks and having confirmations, this was the norm, right? And then Tendermint comes and you're like, nope, you were all wrong. We have this new consensus. You don't really need to think about this idea of confirmations later. So I think just getting a better understanding of proof of work might be very interesting in understanding why Tendermint's cool. And I personally would not recommend people to get to know Cosmos by learning Tendermint. That's an area that people should not have to start with. That would be a very painful experience in learning Cosmos.
Very passionate answer. So, where do you recommend to find the information about Tendermint? Medium, Telegram channel, Twitter, or what is the best way?
The way that I learned a lot of these concepts was actually through the early Cosmos blogs in 2017. So if you kind of scroll back through the Cosmos blog and go back to some of the article that Chengo written in comparing Tendermint and Casper FFG, kind of the value proposition and things like that, those articles go in depth into the pros and cons of each architecture. And although the title itself sounds like it's a very specific comparison, it actually does a very good job of stepping back and looking at the big picture of some of the major components and specialties of consensus. So those were really helpful. I know people don't go back on blogs a lot, but highly recommend reading the early blog posts from 2017. And it gives you a new, fresh perspective too, because now that it's made, and this was 3 years ago, and you're like, oh wow, a lot of these things aren't a product until now, and it gives you a fascinating view.
It's interesting that you say that, because a lot of people that ask me personally about, let's say, Ether or something, my first answer is go back to Vitaliks' blog and have a look, go scroll to the very beginning and read. I mean, obviously you have to read sometimes 5 times the same thing, but after you get it, you get much better understanding.
I want to add that I really like that thread for good projects, that you can find out their initial roadmap And how that roadmap become a real thing.
Yeah, that's also really fascinating.
And it's true mostly for good projects. In my opinion, sorry guys.
No, it's true. So, yeah, let's talk about the community a little. Obviously, apart from Kepler, which I said we will get to, obviously your role is being a community advocate. And the question might sound a little bit weird, but so here it goes anyways. In two parts. So the first part is what is the most difficult thing or part in being a community advocate, and the second part is obviously community buildings are trending, and we can see that they are trending, right? We understand more and more that we are social creatures and blockchain is a communication tool, and there is a community that stands behind each project. So the second part of the question, as somebody who works with the community, do you separate community members and speculators? Or are those the same thing? And if you do separate them, how do you get to understand who's a community member and who's a speculator?
Yeah, and I'll actually answer the second question first because I think that makes more sense. In terms of that, yes, I absolutely separate the speculators and the general people who tend to be more interested. And I know that can sound very bad when it's taken out of context, but here's why. Because I don't fundamentally believe that speculation is wrong. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it actually is what a lot of the value for a lot of these crypto assets came from. But for me, my end goal would be first identify are there people within the speculator group that would be willing to learn more about the tech and the product that's driving this. And if not, then there's not something that I can really address for them. Like there's not much I can do for them, right? And that kind of leads me into the first part is what is the best part of people who are purely interested in making money and profits into an area of interest where it's more product driven rather than chart driven. I think a lot of people have to kind of question what the value of the community is, because if you just have a group of people who's willing to trade your tokens for 30 days because they think they're going to make it money in 30 days, there's not a lot of value that's being left for the community rather than that short term that a bunch of people are buying tokens so you make money. But beyond that, what matters are the users, right? And I think users are a category of the community. I don't think all of the community are users. And that's, I think it'd be hypocritical for me to say all of the community should use our product. Because I think we also have to try to build more interesting and better product that the community members are willing to use simply because it's a good product. So it's a twofold question, right? First of all, the users, the community members have to be willing to kind of take that next step into being long-term stakeholders of the system. And then on the other side of things, you have to build out product that actually has market relevancy. It's a very logical step for them to convert them from simply people who are interested in trading into people who are willing to kind of invest more than just financially, their time and effort into using and bringing feedback to the product. So I think that's the hardest thing. And for me, the thing that I'm more interested in is how do we iterate on the software that we have so it's more compelling for people to use it. That's, I think, something that everyone in the blockchain space is trying to find out right now.
And what is the most difficult thing for you that you find in working with the community? Is it the tools or the lack of tools, or is it, I don't know, the diversity of the people? Is it the time frames? What do you think is, for you personally, of course?
I tend to take things a little bit personally sometimes, so I know this is something that I have to fix as well, but obviously there are topics that different people like, and something that I like might not be of interest to other people. I think the most difficult thing is like when I get really excited about something and I talk about it and I realize no one else really cares about it. So I kind of have to go back and it's like, okay, like how can I make this, what is it the topic itself that's not interesting, or is it the delivery that wasn't interesting, or is it the product, is it the people? So I kind of have to go back and it's like, how can we make this better and more engaging?
Yeah, that makes sense. Because obviously I work with the community as well, so for me it makes a lot of sense. What kind of tools do you use today, or rather, what kind of tools do you think are appropriate to work with a distributed community? Are those the same tools that you would have chosen to work with if you would have worked in Pepsi or in, I don't know, McDonald's or whatever? God forbid, of course, but yeah, no offense to anyone, but...
That makes sense. And when you say tools, you mean things like software and how do we communicate to these people and things like that?
I didn't define it on purpose. I wanted you to define it in your own way, so I didn't want to define on purpose.
Mm-hmm. Well, the best part about crypto community is that there is no one right answer. So the fundamentally, like, I think the humans gets turned into tools, and I don't mean that in a way to like depersonify the person, but I think fundamentally, crypto success will depend on the network effect, and the tools will be the people that are preaching the same vision that you believe in, and in the software, like things like Telegram, Twitter, that's just the intermediary step to getting these people to fully understand this vision. What works in terms of Discord, Telegram, those aren't very relevant. I think how you say it, what you're saying, what you mean, and how you deliver it. Like, I think those are more or less the tools rather than the computer that you have in your hand or the software that you're running. So, yeah.
Actually, yesterday I was giving a talk on a Web3 meetup, and we all came to an agreement. We had like this panel, and I think all the speakers came to at one point an agreement that in Web3, people are actually the content, not in a bad way. And judging by the last 30 or 40 years, content is the king of the internet, right? I mean, we've seen it in Web 1 and Web 0, Web 2, Web 3, whatever. And I think it's not... I totally agree with what you're saying.
I think just like the general metrics that a lot of non-blockchain industry uses might not be as relevant here, because like, other people would be like, it's like, oh, how many people visited our website? Like, how many people, watched our YouTube video? Like, things like that. I mean, it's not irrelevant metric, but I think what's more important is like, who are the people watching it and how did they take it? And are they kind of willing to take the next step? And what is that next step? Are they going to talk to other people? Are they going to create their own content? Or are they going to come up with better follow-through questions? And those are very hard to measure, right? That's kind of one of the other challenges.
Yeah, and talking about metrics, what kind of metrics personally do you use now to measure, do the good things and community really need it, or just in some other cases?
So we're trying to do a mix of things where obviously if you want to convert a lot of people, you have to have a lot of people watching. So something that I've kind of been really focusing on lately is kind of stepping up on the YouTube side rather than going for very boring titles. Comparison of Cosmos and Ethereum 2.0, we'd rather kind of go for, can IBC be used for ETH 2.0 inter-shard communications, or kind of breaking down the 2-hour meetup video into like 3 or 4 minute short clips that a lot of people would be kind of watching. I have more tendency to click on and watch. And for me, really counts is how long these people have watched the video. Rather than the amount of people that's seen it, it gives you a good signal when it's an hour-long video that people have watched for 40 minutes on average, than a 3-minute video that the average view was 13 seconds. View count doesn't matter as much. It's more or less how much time did people commit to things like that.
This is really ironic because the other day we were looking at the metrics of the podcasts, and we were discussing with Anna, and we see the numbers and we're like, oh, those are good numbers for a starting podcast. And then we start to look at the time where people fell off, and we see that there are episodes that people listen to the end, and there are episodes where people fall off, and then you start to try to understand, but why did this person start to fall off on this particular episode here? Where did I go wrong? So I totally see what you're saying there. But I have still one more question about the community. Probably will, unless Anna has some, we will move on. You mentioned that you do separate speculators and community members. So, and this is a bit of a devil's advocate question here. But what kind of an advantage does a community member has in comparison to a speculator? Because at the end of the day, right, again, this is a devil's advocate question. At the end of the day, both will get profit. But because one was just holding the token and then sold it for, I don't know, whatever, and he made, you understand what I'm asking. What is the advantage that I'm as a community member will get to just a normal speculator?
First of all, traders, I think any crypto community needs to have a good amount of traders, and that's a good signal. The bad thing is when you only have traders and no one that's actually, I'm trying to think of a good word here, when you don't have people that are kind of dedicated to the product itself. And I think someone who is kind of committed into that ecosystem, the value that they generate is a lot of times the feedback, because people who really do care about Cosmos are the people that are staking and using the software, and they would always run into different issues where this doesn't seem to be working well or this could be improved, and they tell you that, and that's extremely valuable, because when there's people who are building out the core protocol, a lot of times they miss out on the end user experience of how that feels like at the other side, because I personally think those two people are operating on completely separate brain operating system, thinking about the complete separate things. I mentioned you start simple and you iterate into building out better software. And that was, I'm sure, the foundation of how Cosmos built out product as well. And when you have a lot of these people giving you feedback and suggesting directions to go to, that's very crucial in trying to find a big product market fit where a room full of engineers will not be able to find on their own.
I think I know that Anna had the next question, because I know you said the word that triggered Anna, so you said product market fit.
Yeah, but before that, I have one more question about technical team. How do you communicate with developers, and how you convert what developers do into some community points, and how you explain that things behind code, let's put it that way?
How do you make the bridge between the code and the user?
I think the biggest part and the hardest part is for me to understand what those brackets of code means, because a lot of times I don't even understand it, right? So it typically comes with nagging a bunch of developers. It's like, hey, what does this mean? What does this do? What happens if this doesn't exist? Is this really hard to make? So just no stupid questions. You just have to ask them all and try to get them to explain to you until maybe it's a little too much, and then you're like, okay, I'll kind of take a step back. So that's how it starts. And then I always like analogies. That's why I like explaining things in simple terms. Explaining Cosmos SDK with the success model of how Volkswagen was able to modularize their manufacturing process, and that allowed them to create cars more efficiently, but also a different variety of cars using the same parts, and trying to find correlations in history, in manufacturing processes, in stories where the big picture of the code, the intention of the code, actually matches up with things that people understand better. And that's actually very hard to find sometimes, because there might not be one. If you try hard enough, there's something that works, might just not be as good as you were hoping for. It's a trial and error process.
We just discussed recently with Serge over developing, or what is the correct term? Serge, do you remember?
Yeah, I think over development is...
Over development, yeah, that just developers love the idea so much that they try to improve it constantly. So that brings me to another question about product market fit. Could you tell us a little bit about what is it, and for your personal point of view, and how do you feel about product market fit, how to achieve it, and so check that things.
One example that I would give is with the upcoming Stargate upgrade, one major component is going from Amino to Proto. And to be honest, since I don't have a deep technical knowledge, I didn't know what it meant. It's like, okay, it's faster, but what is this thing? What does it do? What does it mean for the end user? And when you have that mindset of the engineer, you're thinking about, what types of does this type of like serialization improve efficiency in this area? What are like the potential roadblocks in terms of developing on top of this? And these are the things that like engineers worry about, like on the end user side. Like, does it mean like I can send transactions in 2 seconds? Like, but the answer to that is no, right? So product market fit really comes when you're thinking from the mindset of the user, and when you kind of step out of that comfort zone of that like hive mind where everyone thinks alike. And this is where I think the community part comes in, and this is the biggest benefit that blockchain has that I don't think a lot of the markets outside here have, is you have different people working with the same tools achieving different goals, and the experimentation and the process that comes through is, I think, blockchain's biggest potential to success in finding mass usage. You do have to really step outside of the box and try different things. And when you're just, I'm this type of person that does things this way, probably won't be able to find that.
In my opinion, product market fit is the most tricky things in product management. Like how to build unicorn and how to find unicorn, there is no one way to do it.
There's no perfect equation for that, I agree. Yeah.
And I mean, to be honest, crypto markets product market fit has been speculation. Like, to be honest, that is true. Now we just have to kind of get over that and try to find the next step above that. I think we shouldn't try to lie to ourselves that crypto market and speculation is a completely different thing. I think it's the best product market fit that has ever existed so far. It's just not a good one, and we have to find how do we kind of get beyond this, right?
Oh.
It's really ironic that you say that. We just literally before the podcast, I'm writing this proposal, and I came up with this really, I'm sure somebody said it before me, I've never heard about it. Value is in the eyes of the beholder. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And that really suits what we're speaking about, because value is theoretically like beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. And speculation is a massive part of blockchain. And people who deny that, just, well, end of the day, the first use case was money with Bitcoin. And it's a bit silly to say, okay, let's throw it away, even though we both work with communities. Let's get to Kepler finally. What is the story behind Kepler? Do you think it's already found your product market fit? Is it usable? What are your plans? And so on. Tell us everything you want to tell us about it.
To be completely honest, I don't think Kepler has found product market fit yet. The initial intention that we had was to move away from the idea that wallets on proof-of-stake systems exist to transfer assets and to stake assets, to going to the direction where wallets are more in the Ethereum sense of like the tool that you use to interact with applications. And that's an area that I don't think we saw a lot of building happening within the Cosmos ecosystem. A lot of the wallets are focused on staking, and that's that's a very good direction to go, because that's where 90% of the people are interested in, is staking and asset transfer. Maybe we're not necessarily trying to build out the most profitable product, but rather kind of reinvesting into the ecosystem where people who want to build application wouldn't stop simply because they felt like the infrastructure that they needed for users to interact with their applications didn't exist. It's a learning process for us. We're trying to experiment with features on making that easier. I think the biggest drawback is you have a set of rules that you have to abide by, which is, in terms of the Cosmos hub, you have 21-day unbonding periods, you have gas prices, you have, specific rules that everyone agrees to. And from a user side, that can get painful. So we're trying to find creative approaches to either get rid of it or make that feel a little better. But that's a very long-term vision. But right now, it's just one step at a time. Things like adding ENS, name service. Right now, we're kind of waiting for the next wave of applications to thrive in the Cosmos ecosystem. Probably will come with IBC.
Yeah, definitely. Still, because I looked, I think, about a fortnight. I'll be honest with you. You've told me a few times about it, and there were other people as well. But the first time I actually really had a look into it, I'll be honest, was I think it was about a fortnight ago. It was a night before we were about to get on a plane, and I sat down and I looked at it, and I really liked what I saw because I really went on your GitHub and I really started to go and dip into some things. I didn't go like really deep, but I'm not an engineer. So yeah, I don't have that knowledge. I do understand some things, and I really liked what I saw, and I think you guys have something going on. I really hope that you guys keep on developing it with IBC. That's really important. As a user, I would say that I think that will be really cool that if you guys carry on that way. Do you have many users right now, like active user?
Not a ton right now, and that makes sense because right now the only things you can do is stake and send assets, and there are way better wallets to do that. So we're mostly kind of thinking not in the immediate, but in the post-IBC world. That sounds like a very magical term, like the post-IBC world of kind of just preparing all the tools that we need. And things like interchain accounts that we're working on, I think, is one key component of doing it. And we're in the early stages of sketching out different ideas of what will wallets in this post-IBC world will look like. And this is probably like the first time I really shared this out in public, but we're trying to come up with a new model of wallets where a user will only have to manage one account to get access to asset management and application interactions in all other IBC connected zones. If I want to use Cosmos Hub, Iris, Kava, and Cyber, I shouldn't have to manage 4 different accounts. Like that's a no-brainer from a user side. But right now we don't have that infrastructure. So we're trying to come up with, right now in the architecture phase, and then getting into the building phase. You'll probably hear about this more in the upcoming weeks or months.
Yeah, cool. I actually read I think it was your intro, right? About a fortnight ago, about interchain accounts. I think that actually what made me go and look, okay, maybe I'm not the typical user, but that kind of aroused interest, and I was like, okay, that sounds exciting. Let's go and dig into it. Josh, on your Twitter, you have a statement that says, interoperability isn't a technology, it's a state of mind. Now, what does that statement means for you personally?
You can connect all the blockchains, but if you don't have the intention of, if your only intention is to extract value from each other, not to add value, like that's I don't see that as a long-term, it won't have any long-term interoperability potential, like when you're simply there to extract value from each other. I think the good thing about Cosmos is we come from the mindset that 1 + 1 isn't 2. When one blockchain is connected to the other, there is a multiplier effect of the value that can be generated when the two are working together. And I think that should be the kind of mindset that everyone working in Cosmos should have. I could think about in terms of interoperating with Ethereum and bringing that to Cosmos. I could say it's like, oh, Ethereum's DeFi is really taking off. Maybe I could extract some of the liquidity that exists there to generate value for my side. Whereas maybe there is a different way of approaching it where how can we use Cosmos to... Okay, let me step back a little bit here, because this is something that I've thought about. So Uniswap's beauty, when I first saw it, was the fact that I could just have the ETH token and I could interact with all the other applications that existed on Ethereum that used their own tokens. Because before that, I had to go to an exchange, if there is an exchange that listed that token, buy a very small amount, probably like 30 cents to less than $1, and then move it out of the exchange to my account and then use that token to interact with an application. That was just a huge pain process. And when Uniswap came, I was like, oh my God, this is probably like the first time that I've really felt that a decentralized application actually beats the centralized application user experience. And that was kind of my wow factor for Uniswap initially when I first interacted with it. Obviously now, with the gas prices at insane prices for Ethereum, everyone talking about yield farming, trying to make more comp tokens and balancer tokens, the average user isn't able to really experience that for Uniswap anymore. Because, if I want 30 cents worth of tokens just so that I could try to use this application, I'll probably have to pay 60, 70 cents worth of gas fees. And that just isn't worth it. So with interoperability and thinking of Cosmos as an extension or something similar to layer 2 is like, how can Cosmos bring this initial value that has been lost due to the congestion of the network back to the user? And how can the two kind of interoperate in the sense that there's something good being done for Ethereum and there's something good being done for Cosmos as well. So that's just like some example that I had is as blockchains change and narratives change, there's, while change is good and iteration is also good, there's also good narratives and intentions that are being lost in that process. And this is something that we can address collectively, I believe, with a better mindset.
That makes sense. I thought this answer is going to be easier, but there's something to think about, definitely. I like that. I haven't known you for too long, but we've spoken for roughly like 8 months or so, and obviously you come across as somebody with a very decentralized state of mind, at least. Well, that's how you came across from what we spoke about. And this is kind of the next question. What's your take on like projects going full Monty into the decentralized approach? Do you say that it's the way to go, or would you say there still has to be some kind of legal jurisdictional backing, the CEO or CTO or whatever? Or would you say that, well, the way to go is, okay guys, let's get rid of all of that, and just what's your take on that?
I think decentralization is a factor in deciding that, but for me, if having a centralized entity helps you achieve your goal faster, then go for that. If having a decentralized entity helps you achieve your goals faster, then go for that. And I say that because every situation is different, every jurisdiction is different, every organization structure is different. For some of the things that we're trying to work on, there's so much ambiguity in the law within Korea that it actually makes more sense for us to kind of have a decentralized team or decentralized entity working on something, because you'll never be able to achieve that goal with a centralized entity. So I think it really depends on what you're trying to build, whatever that helps you achieve that goal better.
In a utopical scenario, is there a way, and this is what I asked Ethan actually, and I'm interested in your answer as well. In a utopical scenario, will we ever get to the point where every project is decentralized, the whole world is decentralized, or is this utopical and that's not out of the question?
I'm personally in the camp that we will never achieve that, but what I'm hoping for is a world where decentralization isn't an inconvenience, because that's kind of where we have been and where we are. But I think we're going to the direction where having things decentralized doesn't add additional friction. And I think that is kind of what makes it viable. Because like when you think about TikTok and things like that, everyone knows, like someone just posted that they take your clipboard, they can steal what you had in your clipboard every 3 seconds or so, and no one really cares because it's like TikTok's fun, everyone else uses it. The same thing with the messengers. In Korea, most people use KakaoTalk, and you can talk about the awful privacy, security downfalls of Kakao or WeChat even. No one really cares. Like, privacy isn't a feature that people would go out of their way for, at least at this time. So the approach I think that we should have is, how can we offer a product that is compelling that also has privacy, rather than privacy itself is the selling point of this product. I think developments in this space is really interesting in kind of going to that first point.
I see. It's another statement to think about, I think. Very profound. I like that. It's what makes, I think, us different from, not us as in like me and you here, it makes everybody different when you start to realize how things actually step behind the reality and the usual, like, do I need to care about the fact that my clipboard is being stolen, or do I need to care about the fact that there is a proxy server inside my phone right now that God knows what it's doing.
Do you think that for decentralized project privacy is a core thing, or maybe it's not the first task we have to solve?
I think privacy should be the end goal, as in the long-term goal. But I think if you get into trying to solve privacy in the short term, you might not have long-term success. Because going back to the whole speculator versus community thing, the truth of the matter is the people that are interested in this space are speculators. That's where we found product market fit. The question is, how do you turn that into something more meaningful? And it's the same thing with privacy and utility. Privacy is important, but it shouldn't be what everyone is focused on right now. I think it should be the utility. I assume everyone has the mindset of wanting more privacy in this space. So when these people are working on useful products, I think they will bring useful products with privacy on default, rather than working on some abstract cryptography things. I'm always more of a product first person, so.
Yeah, cool. And you have your personal opinion, and you have the general opinion of the community, and sometimes it's really super hard not to take things personally. What is your secret methods, maybe how to deal with the daily level of communication and controversials that you faced during your work with the community?
I think honesty. And the nice thing is, at least my company doesn't force us to kind of have the same mindset as the company statement and company vision and whatnot. Like, we all agree on the same vision, but I think they allow you to kind of think of different ways of getting it, and they respect individual opinions and things like that. So when people ask me questions that can be uncomfortable, I just say, here's what I think, but this is one person's opinion. If you disagree, happy to discuss. You just have to bring up good points with valid data and things like that. I think just being honest about it and not having this us versus them mentality, rather it's like, how is this something that we can kind of solve together?
Totally. I would probably add +1 to that. Now, going back to the tricky question, you promised at the end of the podcast to answer that. So, talking about your tweets and describing in one sentence the differences between Tendermint and Cosmos and the benefits of each, if it's possible.
I'd say Tendermint is the engine that powers the car, and Cosmos SDK would be the kind of like the car itself, and Cosmos itself is the world that you're driving in. So for you to see a lot of these things that exist in this world, you need a good engine to get you from point A to point B, because if you don't have that, car will break down, and you want to make sure you get there in a comfortable fashion. So you need to have a car that can get you from, let's say, through that 7-hour drive. But Cosmos in itself is an ecosystem where many different things exist in different distances, and if there's nothing interesting to see 7 hours away from you, I don't think anyone would like to take that 7-hour drive. I guess that would be my analogy that I just kind of came up with in 3 minutes.
I like that. I had the same problem yesterday where somebody asked us, how would you describe Web3 to a 5-year-old? And then people start coming up with answers.
What was your answer for that? I'm interested.
At first, I gave an answer which was complicated, and everybody else gave complicated answers. And then I realized that, well, they are not for 5-year-olds. So my answer was, let's imagine that you're playing on a playground and there is a girl you really like. And you want to tell her that you like her, but you don't want the other boys to know that you like her. So, or the other part is that you have a boy that's playing on a playground with you and you really want to exchange your toy for his toy. So Web3 is when you would tell that girl that you like her and nobody else would know, or where would you exchange that toy with somebody else and you don't need to ask your father's permission for that.
That's a good one. That's a very good one.
I don't know if it's good or not, but we were like talking about 5-year-olds and we're like, we need to find it. But anyways, going back to you. So this is something we ask everybody that comes on the show, and this is kind of the last question, unless you want to add something. The question that we ask is not Cosmos related, not Tendermint related, not Bitcoin, not Ether, because that's too boring of an answer. What are the 3 projects that you're excited about and you're interested in?
So just 3 projects in general?
In blockchain space.
I don't know. I guess the things that I'm most excited about are the things that I'm working on, and I know that's a cop-out answer. So I'm hella excited for interchain accounts. I'm so excited for interchain accounts. I think this is going to be... Like, I know no one else really gets this at this point, but I really think this is going to be what drives initial IBC adoption. So that's first. I'm excited about liquid staking in general. There's not really anything tangible that we're working on. It seems like a lot of the things that excite me are the things that I'm working on, which is such a blessing.
What about Dogecoin?
Oh yeah, Dogecoin. That's something that I actually wanted to do one time, is save the world by changing Dogecoin into a proof of stake based system. Because like right now you're having meme coins destroy the planet by being on proof of work. So like, how can we convert this into proof of stake? This was an idea that I had 2 years ago. Still haven't really come up with a good answer.
I can help you with an answer.
Awesome.
Obviously, you've heard about, this is something I came up with just when you asked it, so I don't know if it's going to be correct, but you've heard about District 0x, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, so they have a mem factory, and obviously SafeChain is building Ethermint on Cosmos. So as soon as they finish it, that means that technically the contracts of, together with the mem factory of District 0x will start to function on Tendermint. So you will have an ability. I have no idea how it will work, because nobody knows how it will work. We asked ChainSafe and they don't know how it will work as well, but they're working on it. So maybe that's something that you could twist.
As important as the Ethereum to Cosmos peg zone is, having a Dogecoin to Cosmos peg zone will be crucial in at least saving the planet one little step at a time. Like, I'd be more than happy to pitch, donation in for that.
Josh, maybe something me and Anna didn't ask you and you want to mention?
Yeah, I guess I kind of want to get into interchain accounts a little bit. This is something that Tony, who is the initial person that came up with the idea, and I are working on right now. And this is the idea where, I mentioned this earlier, you have these accounts that are native to the blockchain. That's really cool for sovereignty of the blockchain. But when you think about it, Ethereum's success didn't come from applications being sovereign. It came from applications being interoperable with each other very seamlessly. The process that we have right now is you need to have an IBC, and then you have to build these application layer IBCs on top of IBC protocol. And it's just like a very long and winded process that each of these applications will have to go through. So what we thought was, like, how can you bring application composability without adding an extra layer of development and research resources being spent into it? So we're like, okay, well, if an account on the Kava zone can open a CDP, and an account on Cosmos Hub can stake and vote, an account on, let's say some other project is able to access the features of the application. And a lot of times, like, you don't really need to have application to blockchain module specific interoperability. You can just kind of access a lot of these features through accounts. So we're like, okay, why can't one zone control an account on another zone and access the application through the account? And this is nice because, like, you don't have to change the staking module to access staking, to let the IBC module access it. And when you get into that, who knows what you're changing and, what vulnerabilities you'll introduce. This is nice because, like, you just have a blockchain within an account. And the account is basically the blockchain, right? So if I want to do a CDP in the Kava zone through an interchain account, like, I can do it from a completely different account. And if I want to search the decentralized, like, IPFS websites through Cyber, I could just have an account on the Cyber zone and I can do that from another blockchain, just using what this account is able to do. So this is, I think, is how a lot of applications will interoperate in the very early stages of IBC. Because if not, you're going to have to build out this, interchain standards of how to query, how to search things on Cyber, how to open CDPs on Kava, and that's just a very inefficient way of trying to get application use cases. So I think a lot of initial application composability will come through interchain accounts. It will also bring the idea of modular wallets that, like programmable wallet. You can automate a lot of the features. If you want your staking rewards in dollars and not in the native token, you can actually program a wallet that controls a lot of these other wallets and other blockchains to kind of do that for you through some type of token swap mechanism or whatnot. So this is something we're so excited to kind of see early on in the Cosmos ecosystem, and we're actively building right now, hoping it will be ready as soon as IBC is ready. So that's kind of what we're working on. And if anyone else has ideas on how this can be extended, or if anyone else wants to use this, feel free to hit me up.
Sounds like something, the way I would describe it is probably like a user-managed liquid smart IBC-backed contract. Liquid in terms that you could program it and it's yours, and it's a liquid smart contract.
Yeah. It's almost like turning an account into a smart contract, which is something that already exists on.
Looking forward to that, and yes, and if anyone has any ideas, I hope that you can. It's not very difficult to find, Josh. So, anyways, it's been a huge pleasure speaking to you, Josh.
Thank you for coming, and thank you all our listeners being with us today.
Yeah, thank you, and join us next time for Cities and Cosmos. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.